Hi guys, this is Maker of a Beauty back online again. So this class is showing you how to assemble a paper flower. It's a different petal, but it's still the petal that was created using shapes in a design space, which is a software that goes along with the Cricut cutter machine. Any case, this petal is also the right size where you could use the large size petal to be treated as a medium one. This is essentially, I'd say, part two to my how to put a paper flower together. I'm not going to be talking too much about what type of paper you should be using, because you can see that you can review that information in my first video. This is going to be more on a curling and all different things that you can do to make your flower to look pretty and different. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and cut it out. 6 petals for our first layer. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm going to put this away for now. This is my large/medium, and there's my small petal. So here's my first layer, and I'm just going to see whether or not I like my slit. And it's not bad. I think it's pretty good. I don't need to cut it any further, but I do want to give it a little bit more depth to this, right? So the very first thing that I will do is, and again, you don't have to, this is just all suggestions. Like you can take the same petal and curl it in 3 different ways, and you will have somewhat similar flower, but the end result will be different. So I'm just going to bend it right in the middle to give it a nice line. And I'm going to do 3 of them at the same time. I'm going to do the same thing here. And for the first layer, I'm going to curl all of them in the same direction, right? And I'm going to open the petal out. So for this, you can do several different things, right? You can have this tool that looks like your butter knife, and you can actually use your butter knife if you want to. You don't actually have to purchase this tool, but it's nice. It sits in your hand a little bit better than butter knife. I've seen people to curl it this way. Like that had never worked for me, so I always curl it that way, right? And you want to be careful. Like it took me a while to learn how to use a knife. If you put too much pressure when you put the knife, behind your petal, and you press it down with your finger, you don't want to put so much pressure. You just want to put enough that you still have control over it, but not so hard that you end up leaving, basically a crease in a paper. Like I try to give it as smooth of a look as possible. And sometimes what I will do, I will actually take a rolling something. So let me just go to my toy box and like this pen, right? I think it'll do a trick just great. Like this will do wonderful too. So I'm gonna grab my next batch. I'm gonna flip it and just try to make sure that you curl it, Oh, okay, I just realized in my video that I need to adjust where my hands are because I was a little bit too farther away. So I'm not going to delete and restart because I'm already halfway into it. So I apologize. I'm gonna try to see if I can save the video and trim that part out. But if not, you're just gonna have to look through some parts and be like, oh, I don't see what she's doing. And then, ta-da, you come to a part where you are able to see what I'm doing. Any case, so for now, all my petals are being curled downward. That is not to say that you have to do it this way, right? You could also have curled it like you can glue it this way, or you can glue it this way. Both of them are pretty. It's just going to be a slightly different look, right? So for this one, I'm going to be curling it that way. I'm actually going to pause the video so I can glue all my petals quickly, because I don't know if you guys want to watch me sitting here and gluing my petals. So I'm just going to show you how I glued my first petal. I'm gonna pause the video and I'm gonna come back, and when I come back, all my petals are magically glued. Wouldn't it be great if it worked like that in real life too? All right, so I am done gluing my first layer of petals. I'm gonna move this out of the way. And so I have my circle, right? And the size of my circle is an equivalent to the height of my large petal. You know, I would say for somebody who's just starting out and you're still learning, you know, your way around how to assemble the flower petal, I would actually give it 1 extra inch just so that you have more real estate space to work with. You know, having the precise measurements is something I think that will come with the experience. All right, so I'm going to glue my very first petal, and there it is. And again, try to press it down as hard as you can to make sure that it adheres very well. And I'm going to glue my second petal opposite of this. What that will do, it will give me good positioning to see where I need to be putting in my remaining 4 petals. Oh, let's move that out of the way. Okay, so it's right across of each other. And one thing I want to tell you, you know, about the way you assemble the flower petal. You will find that different artists have different ways. Like some of us, you know, will do what I'm doing, and others will go like one by one. A lot of times what comes into place is the size of our petal on the base, right? So mine tend to be pretty skinny towards the end, and so, you know, with how my flowers end up looking, right, you can't really stagger them, like, you know, right next to each other with 6 petals when your base is the same height as your large petal, because you're gonna end up, you will need a lot more than 6 petals. So, you know, if you wanted the petals, like, you know, touch each other like this, you would just basically need to have 8 of them, you know, instead of 6. So that's oh, and I see that actually something came apart, but we're gonna quickly fix it. My glue wasn't hot enough just yet, and I kind of jumped the gun. So let me just quickly fix it up. Okay. And I know that, you know, if you're just starting out and you're just like watching a bunch of TVs, I remember myself that when people would like, you know, explain some of the details, and I have to be honest, not everybody who does the videos will go into the tips and tricks that really help you to put together a good flower together. But in any case, you know, the people would like throw in some ideas, and it just reads like a foreign language. You don't quite understand what it really means until you start putting it together. And okay, I see that I need to readjust my camera, so let's just try to see if I can swing it back this way a little bit. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. Okay, so here's my petal. You know, I don't like how this one is set, so I'm probably going to unglue it and glue it back. And in my very first video, right, that I made, I said that the cardstock is pretty forgiving, so you guys will see firsthand just how forgiving it is. So I'm going to actually just take this. Okay, it's holding on. And don't worry, this imperfection will completely get covered up. It's not a problem at all. I'm just going to take it up a little bit a notch. Okay. Again, press it down real hard. Okay. So that I like much better. Now I'm gonna set aside, and I'm gonna show you where how I'm going to curl my next set of layers. And so this is just gonna go on the side. I'm gonna bring back my large that is acting as medium-sized petal, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna give it a nice like a score line to give it just a little bit more of a depth. I'm just gonna bend it right there in the middle and go like this. I'm still gonna be curling 2 of them at a time to save myself on a time. Sometimes if with some of the petals, right, I will even do 3 of them at the same time. I'm going to use the pen still, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to curl, let me think how I want to do it. Yeah, I want to curl this one up, but that one is down. Now you don't have to do this, right? Like you could have just let me actually use this, I think will be a little bit better. You don't have to do it this way. This is just show you guys that, you know, you can have the same petal, one petal, you curl it this way, you curl it that way, and the look changes because of that. Like you could curl this petal right now exactly same way as we did this round, and it would be just as pretty. So as you curl it, the subsequent remaining petals, just make sure that you are staying, and I just made the very same mistake that I told you to be aware of. Make sure that you curl everything in one direction so it's consistent. Yep, now it's consistent. Okay, I'm gonna flip this one out. What I like about this one is because of its thickness, right? And I'll show you what sometimes I will also, if I feel like there is just not enough of the curl, like I'll use a knife. I would say that at the beginning, right, definitely go with maybe like markers, because it'll just be so much more forgiving on the paper. Okay, so I'm going to actually do this one first. And don't worry, this time I definitely got the order right. Okay, and this one is coming up. Oh, by the way, I did not tell you that this is petal number 3. So far, I believe I have about 3 or 4 petals that I created directly in a design space. Most of my petals I have created using a graphic design tool, and it took me about almost a year to learn how to use a pen tool. Okay, so here's my medium size, and I'm going to start gluing that in. The glue is starting to get pretty hot, and so it's burning the fingers, but that's just the nature of the beast. I'm gonna pause the video again, and I'll be back soon, guys, when I'm done gluing my petals. Okay, so I have all of my medium slash large, or large slash medium ready, and so now I'm ready to glue my next layer, right? So this will go directly between my 2 petals, and so because I'm starting to close in on a space, right, it could be that this time on my second layer the petals are overlapping one another, and what I mean is, like, you know, they will be touching like each other like this. And so bearing that in mind, when I glue my very first petal, I'm gonna put the dot of a glue just on one side and leave this open. This is to make sure that when I get down with my last petal to the first petal, there is a space to tuck it under, because that makes it look just so much better. I'm gonna give a little bit more of a glue, and I'm starting to run out, so I need to pop it in. Okay, so I'm going to put this one in right there, press it down. As I said, that sometimes I like to use this tool because I feel like it just gives me so much more control over how much more pressure I can put it in. Let me remind you to not to make a mistake of bringing in your petals, you know, like down, 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 so much closer, because it just, I guess, like visually, right, you just want to orient yourself to the previous petal, and you want to the ends like to touch. I guess, you know, that's the only way I can explain like why that happens. So just make sure you don't do that, right? It needs to go where it needs to go to make sure that your petal is proportionate and it's not getting squashed. So the petals are definitely overlapping at this point. It's a good... Okay, let me just make sure on my video that you guys can see what I'm doing. I finally figure out some of the equipment, but not all of it. And you know, with the new technology, it just, I can hack it, but it takes time to learn it. I have 2 kids, both of them are very energetic. And I myself, you know, have a full-time job besides this one, so it's always like on the go and just not enough time to learn all the technology that I would just absolutely love to learn. In any case, we are almost done with our second layer. Let's put this one in here. Okay. And then when I'll be putting this one in, you know, it's not that much overlap, but still, like, you know, there is slight overlap, and I will tuck this under the very first petal. So I'm gonna give it a pretty generous amount of the glue, slide it in, press it down. Okay, now I'm gonna go back in and I'm going to glue the very first petal. So the reason you do that, right, is because overlapping over it just wouldn't look as good, where, like, you know, doing it under, it's so much neater. I really need to adjust this camera. I apologize, guys. Okay, now what I want to say is this, right? This petal is already starting to look pretty good. If you wanted to, right, you could definitely stop and just, you know, if you have like a very fluffy center, like that would make it beautiful by itself. Or like even if you have like a small center like this, that would also be enough. I don't have any big fluffy centers, but as you can see, I tend to like to put in small layered flowers inside as the centers. But you know, that alone was just having 2 layers because of the type of the petal this is. Like, it has a lot of you know, like fluffiness and the curls and everything else. Like, you could stop right here, right there, and it would look just great. But since I've had plans to show you more of the curling, I want to continue on with a small one. So with the small one, once again, we're going to give it that score line. And this time you have a couple of choices of what you could do, right? You could now curl this petal with both sides going inward like this, right? So that would be, this one is outward, this one is, you know, like one way, one half petal outward, inward, or other, you know, inward, outward, and you know, and this is just complete opposite. That's one option. I'm actually going to go with inward, outward, but I'm going to reverse it, right? What I mean by that is that, you know, if you look at the medium layer, this side is going the outward and this side going inward. Well, I'm gonna reverse it, right? So this is going to be going inward, and that one is going to be going out. Okay, so, and sometimes, you know, like I literally have to like look at what I've done previously to help me to determine what I'm going to do with my next one. Okay, and let me glue it up to show you. There's my glue one right there. Okay. Okay, so I have all of my small petals ready. And just to remind you guys, you know, the ways I tend to keep my proportions is that the distance, or rather the reduction between my largest petal and my smallest petal is 1 inch, irregardless whether I'm going to treat the large petal as my medium petal or actually reduce it itself. You know, the second one over, right, it's going to be 1 inch. So for example, if I had like 5 layers, because I was doing 22 inches, I would still, you know, my from extra large to large, it would be reduction by 1 inch, because I basically calculate everything at 0.5 reduction between my petals. Okay, so here's my small ones already, and as you can see, I curled them up opposite of what I have in my medium, and it's back to layering the petal between the petals. It's kind of like this. It's gonna be, you know, a tight squeeze, but that's okay. And just remember that I will put the dab on one side and leave the other side open, just in case if I have to tuck it in, I'll be able to tuck it in, you know, under, as opposed to over it, which will give it like a cleaner and neater look. And you can see it, right? My proportions are pretty good. Like, you know, you can only go in between the other petals. And so like this will lead me very nicely into talking about utilizing free petals, right? You definitely should do that, because, you know, I love freebies myself. I get them all the time. I mean, or rather, I look for them all the time. But one thing about, you know, when you have the freebies, not all freebies are quality freebies, and also that, you know, if you're looking for like a certain look, like I love Pearl Flowers, for example. She was the one whom I started to follow when I first got into the paper flower business, versus like Jennifer Maker. You just can't compare the two. And I mean, like, Pearl's flowers are so amazing, or even Forever Petals by V. I mean, they're just great, right? Like, you can't compare it to the Judy, the Creek Cutter, I think, something, I forget her exact name. You just, they're not the same. The look and feel, the end result are not the same, and there is a reason to it, you know. Okay, so we have our flower ready. Let me just get rid of all this. Very pretty. It's very fluffy. And I'm gonna finish up by taking one of my what I call layered flowers. And the reason I call them layered flowers, because this gets cut out as one piece, as opposed to like having an individual petal, right, that you have to work with. And I'm gonna turn that into my center and just put it in the middle of it. Actually, that might be a little too big, so let me try this one. I'm just gonna make sure that clearly I've used this for something else, but that's fine. Let me see if that's gonna, yeah, I think that's gonna be much better for this. Let me just try to curl it up a little bit more and sort of like fluff it up. So I've talked about, if this video is the first video you watch me, please read the description and definitely watch the very first video that I recommend that you watch, because I spend so much more time talking about different things in there, as opposed to just concentrating on putting the flowers together. And also consider watching my video on how to set up the project in a design space, because there I talk about my laid flowers a bit, right? But what I want to say is that, you know, most of my layered flowers have been created from the real estate space that I have on my projects that I'm cutting it out, my petals. And I want to say something, that if I was to make a very large petal, most likely I would probably cut the extra large ones by hand, because it does go faster. and I would do everything else on a Cricut. You know, there's always like all these conversations about, you know, do we use a Cricut to cut the petals, because even though the cutting might be fast, right, there's still the loading, the unloading. You need to prepare everything in the design space itself. So, you know, which way do you go? And I think it depends on what it is that you do. Like if I just needed one big flower for myself and I had a lot of time, I would just use my Cricut. But if, however, I have a large backdrop to do and I need to hurry up, then you know, I'd probably do half and half. You know, it's the smaller sizes would be cut on the Cricut, and the large ones I would cut it by hand. So there is no one clear answer. Okay, and I've clearly used this for something else. I don't remember what. I always have like a pile of small flowers with the, so I'm just gonna cut this off without cutting the actual petal off. Okay, that does a trick. Believe it or not, I rarely like just have make the center. Like I'll probably already have like something in the works, because from all the leftovers and so on and so forth, and I just grab that. So I'm gonna be pretty generous to make sure that this petal doesn't move. Okay, now I'm gonna put that squirrel in the middle, and I'm gonna take my trusted, okay, maybe not this one, that one might be a little bit too big, and I'm just gonna put this in to make sure that it keeps it in place. And I'm gonna put as much pressure as I can to make sure that the flower lays flat, because you know, if you don't press it down, what ends up happening is your hot glue will freeze, will harden as one big glob. And I'm just going to take this hand off so you guys can see what it is that I'm doing. But basically I'm just pressing it down to make sure that it adheres, so that it stays. Okay, and so there we have it, our flower where the petal was designed completely in design space. It's a medium size, and just to confirm that it is a medium size, let me grab my measuring tape and go from one end to another end, and yep, I got my 12 inches, give or take. So probably if I go from here, then I definitely have my 12 inches here. It's more like 11.75. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please visit my Facebook page. I am on Instagram. You know, definitely check out my Etsy shop. Send me an email. I'm a very technical person. I love answering questions. I do that at work all day long, so why not in my business as well? And on this, take care. Thank you for watching my video.